Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's System Admin webinar. Our topic for today is WeEstimate System Configuration Overview. My name is Samantha Perry, and joining me today is Stephen Nasty, who will be instructing us through. After today's webinar, you're going to be able to review groups and group right settings and be able to make those changes. We're going to review user grid right settings. I think we'll do that in the system configuration and probably also point out some global settings there. Identify different settings at the regional and office level for those of you with large organizations. And also to create and edit different item types for your quote outside of material. So this is going to include labor, recurring revenue items, chargeable items, test and inspection items, and more. So before I pass it on to Stephen, as always, we want you to get the most out of your time today. If you have any questions at all throughout the webinar, don't be shy. Please type them right into the chat, even if it's because you'd like us to repeat something or see something again. So we have a lot to go through. So with that, I'll pass it on to you, Stephen.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So Sam, I mentioned today we're going to be kind of spending most of our time within the kind of system configuration window. I'm going to be jumping around here and there as well. But yeah, Sam had said it's going to be kind of a jam-packed one with a lot of different things to kind of go over in terms of just groups and grid rights and all that good stuff. So right now, just as always, I'm showing this on 6.8, which is one of the later builds we have to offer. And this is our kind of internal environment, so there might be some things here that might, say like test or things along those lines. Yeah, with that being said, we're going to kind of start into the first topic here, which is just reviewing groups and grid rights. So really quick, like I said, a lot of our time today is going to be spent in tools than system configuration. System config has a lot of the kind of per user system settings here. We're really going to be focusing on these last two tabs today. We have regions and offices, and we have groups. So groups, this is a really good place to start. With groups, all of your groups are going to be listed on the left-hand side. You're going to see, just your entire list of your group names. You're going to see in the middle portion of your screen, you're going to have three tabs here: the group, the region selection, and fixed pricing contracts. The very first group tab here just gives you an example, just shows you the group name and very basic group description. The region selection shows what regions this group has access to. So this is a nice way to say, like, if you ever were, from an admin standpoint, creating a job, or you had a user create a job, and it said the user doesn't have access to this region or anything along those lines, the first thing that I would say to do is to go to this region selection window here and just make sure that you have your the correct region enabled for them. If a user doesn't have this, it'll prevent them from creating a job in that particular region. So it's just imperative to make sure that these regions are selected. The pricing contracts window, this is there if you have the fixed pricing contract module, but this allows that region, that group, to have access to these specific fixed pricing contracts. So we'll hit cancel there. So we'll go back to our group window. In addition to that, you also have on the right-hand side, you have your list of basically permissions and rights for that particular group. So each one of these rights are broken out by their respective header. So I'm not going to go through necessarily every single one of these rights, but I'll kind of go through kind of the gist and then kind of highlight the important ones. The very first section here in the dashboard, this is kind of what dictates what the user will see and have access to at a very basic level. One of the newer builds allows us to kind of toggle this allow new projects button, where if you want to restrict users from creating brand new projects, you can toggle this off. A lot of the times what our users will do is they'll have users go through WeOpportunity and create a lead, RFQ it, and then be able to physically open it up through WeEstimate by deactivating this checkbox. And what that basically does, in essence, is that takes away the ability for the user to start a new project in WeEstimate. They have to create a lead within WeOpportunity. So from an admin standpoint, if you're trying to get your users to strictly work on WeOpportunity first, and kind of follow that sales process from lead to job creation, this might be something that you might consider. You might want to maybe toggle this off to prevent users from just starting new projects and not having them linked. We had a couple of users take on that, fairly recently, and they've been having very good results with it. And it was a nice kind of workflow process to basically guide people, kind of start within the opportunity to kind of work over. Beyond that, I would say that you have your screens tab. This is generally here if you want to kind of control what users have access to in terms of like buttons and things like that. There'll be things here like the commission erg, program options, reports, things that are, at a glance that are, available at the very top. Here's your commission erg right here. You can restrict, like the program options, system configuration, things like that, where you can take away these drop downs. Again, these screens are really there to restrict access that, like an everyday salesperson might not have access to or might not need access to. Editors, again, kind of continuing on that same boat here. Editors is this tab right here, which actually we're going to showcase in a little bit later. Editors is generally where you would go to add charge items, RMR, tested, inspected, and wire. This is something that you might want to restrict because you don't want users to go in there and add parts at will. So this might be something that you want to control there on that end. So again, there you have your total items editor, your package editor, part editor, RMR editor, things like that. Anything that has editor next to the name of it is just how you can add that physical item. Quote creation, this checkbox, this little section here, just allows you to control specific options when you're creating a quote or a job, such as region selection, engineer selection, quick quote. These checkboxes control the dropdowns. So if you want to have a user to be able to select what region they're quoting to, you can always go ahead and select this checkbox. If you're using the engineering module, you can select this as well, so they can dictate who they want the engineer on the job to be. If this isn't enabled, they won't be able to really do anything with that section there. Commissions. Commissions are really kind of controlled by the actual commission grid itself. If you use the commissions module, you can control who can set up and who can pay the commissions out within the system. Generally speaking, each company has one or two people that generally handle commissions from that standpoint. If you're having and this is generally on the commission erg. So if you are working and you're doing your commissions through WeEstimate and using that as a reference point, or using the commissions erg, you would want to make sure that that user, if it's yourself or somebody else, has access to setup and okay to pay, which will kind of configure the commission standpoint from the commission erg. Other rights, this is just strictly the one note deletion. This is there if you just want to have the ability to delete notes within the software. The notes tab is up here, this little purple notepad icon. Beyond that, a lot of the stuff also kind of starts to get a little bit nitty gritty here. Contact rights basically just gives you control over what a person can edit and delete or add in terms of a customer, center billing, things along those lines. Contact database sources. Whenever you see database sources, so there's going to be a couple tabs here that say database source or source in them. But that basically means is that we have WeSuite and we have accounting sources. The best way I can describe it is you have your WeSuite database, you have your accounting database. We have the ability to support both. So if you are in a situation where you want to see one or the other, you would want to make sure that you have access to just strictly that one or the other here. So contact, this is the contact database sources. You have the ability to WeSuite and accounting contacts. Kind of continuing with that, you'll have your charge items. So you'll see charge items, you'll see parts. Kind of scroll down a little bit, you'll see that as well. This just generally controls what source the user has access to. So this is your gray gear for WeSuite parts, your red gear for your accounting parts. So you would want to make sure that you have the correct source available. I know generally speaking, it's one or the other. It's either WeSuite or accounting. I know there's some situations where our clients have both. In that case, you want to make sure both are toggled on. But this is controlled by a group. So you want to make sure that each group has the respected source enabled for them. I've actually just had this come up not too long ago where a client wanted to hide the WeSuite source because people were adding in the wrong parts. Then it would just be going through each group here and just unselecting the WeSuite source. So if you just want to focus on the accounting, you can just get rid of that one source, and they'll only be able to see that red gear, or vice versa, or the gray gear. The estimate source, yes, this is the accounting interface. This is generally there for you if you are, if you have an accounting integration first and foremost. But these checkboxes, what they effectively do is they will give you the access and ability to have an extended accounting window. So the extended view for job and system type allow you to view when you're moving forward with the job, what each folder has in terms of a job and system type, in terms of parts as well. So it gives you a nice kind of extended additional view when you're working with the job, so you can see if there's any sort of accounting issues at a glance. These two are generally there for mapping issues. So if you have, a mapping issue where a part isn't mapping or a folder isn't mapping or anything along those lines, checking off the extended view and extended job and system type, you'll be able to see at a quick glance what is missing. Accounting import and reset for accounting and mark as imported. These three options are there, generally speaking, for your accounting team. If you're using an accounting system, accounting import allows you to move the job to accounting ultimately. Reset allows you to pull it out of accounting import. And mark as imported is a button that appears where you can automatically flag a job as imported. And what it will do is it'll bypass the accounting import process. Generally speaking, the mark as imported is a situational tool that's available if you want to, like let's say you imported a job already and you already did the work, or maybe it was like a duplicate value or anything along those lines, you can go ahead and do the mark as imported source. That's a very situational one, but it is useful to have just in case the accounting team already imported a job. Charge items, like I mentioned before, not really much here to show. It's just strictly speaking what sources you want to view your chargeable items for. This will effectively give you a drop-down tab in the actual job itself where you can toggle between WeSuite and accounting. Features, this effectively gives you a couple different features within the software. Supporting documents is a folder, if you're not familiar with it, on the actual job where you can attach PDFs, Excel files, Word documents, Notepad files, things like that, where this gives you access to that folder so you can view that folder, add to it, remove from it, things like that. Photo editor is tied to a new doc editor on the document level. Forecasting is a feature that we have where you can, kind of do projections where you can see, kind of forecast, kind of the win rate of a job or upcoming next action items, pipeline, things like that. Editing job status allows you to kind of toggle the drop down, where you're able to kind of set between, in progress, job won, job lost. Show approvals allows you to kind of have additional viewership on the approvals screen where you can see, the status of the job, whether it's currently in approval, pending approval, things like that. And status change is a complemented piece to the edit job status where it allows you to also, change the actual status of the actual, quote itself. Labor, this is a tab that gives you access to just additional labor calculations, labor functionality. Gives you the ability to edit labor, auto-calculate labor, the ability to mark a job as a box sale, an RMR box sale. This markup labor gives you access to this little arrow on the left-hand side of the screen, which allows you to mark up a labor kind of globally with a GPM. Beyond that, there's just sort of a kind of a hodgepodge of other kind of miscellaneous options down here. Really from this screen, the ones that I would say to focus on are the estimate discount, which allow you to have additional access to globally discount an estimate itself to a certain GPM or a certain dollar value. The estimate, and then I would say probably from a support standpoint, the biggest things that I've seen that come in is these two right here. So GP adjust advanced, GP adjust even. These two checkboxes are when you work on a quote and you're entering in a GP value, like let's say you're working with, trying to get like a value of like 35 GPM on the job. The advanced feature allows you to toggle exactly where you want to pull that difference from. It'll give you the option to do, parts, miscellaneous, charge items, labor, things like that. Whereas GP adjust even says, hey, the job is currently, 40%. We want to get it down to 30. Even will take what it can from every single category and try to mitigate that that disparity. So having both is, in my opinion, very, very important. I think that there's cases for both. even is generally very good if you have a decent spread on the actual code. If you have, parts, labor, armor, charge time, things like that. Advanced is a little better if a job is heavy in one area, like, if it's very part heavy and things like that. Packages, this gives you access to just add a package, right? So you have the ability to add a package, delete a package, and edit a package. Part sources, same thing kind of here to go along with the chargeable items. Gives you access to which source you want to be to have viewability on, whether it's WeSuite accounting or your fixed pricing contract. Parts, not really too much here. It's just the ability to add a one-time part, dragging and dropping a part into a quote, editing a part and deleting a part. 9 times out of 10, these are things you would want to have access to really everybody within the actual organization. So kind of important checkboxes there. Pass-throughs, this gives you the ability to edit a pass-through if it was marked as a pass-through on a quote. Armor, same thing as parts, right? You'll have your WeSuite and accounting source. Contractors, give you the ability to edit that. Tabs, tabs give you the ability to have access to the leasing tab if you have a leasing module. The status tab is kind of a conjunction with leasing. Status tab gives you access to things like burden, material burden, freight warranty, things like that. Tax is your tax tab. This additional tax section here just gives you access to additional functionality within the tax tab, such as locking the rate. Gives you access to specific tax configurations, such as sum only, cost and sell. The variance tab, also in conjunction with the status tab, gives you access to these certain categories below it. So if you're looking for the freight, warranty, burden, and material burden within the variance tab in the status section, you have to turn these options on here. And then the last little section here is just really based on your document. You have the ability to add, delete, and edit a quote, which is just your quote packages. Scope of work, same concept, gives you the ability to add, delete, or edit a scope of work. Templates, this gives you the ability to add, delete, and edit a template. These are generally done from the either a checkbox on the document tree or for a scope of work, cover letter, things like that. So this gives you the ability to make changes and add those. Then lastly, there's also some other miscellaneous options for documents, such as editing terms and conditions, and allowing and creating and modifying terms and conditions templates. And then also down here you have 2 for DocuSign, to allow edit or delete recipients, and then allowing the editing contact type. So these are generally there for you, and these are more kind of specific, I would say, to organizations. You may want to have restrict access to terms and conditions to be editable for certain users. Also, some clients have terms and conditions hard-coded into their document, so this might not pertain to you. If you have it not hard-coded and you just have terms and condition templates, then this might be something to review on your end, just to make sure that you have the correct users going in. I don't think it's wise to have everybody to be able to access and change terms and conditions. This won't do anything, however, for the ability to select templates. So they'll be able to select the templates, but they won't be able to make changes and make edits to that. Okay. So that really is a walkthrough on the group section. I wanted to kind of go a little deeper today because I actually had a couple people reach out to me with questions on what each of these checkboxes do. So I want to kind of get that into the webinar form. Was there any questions, anything that I've covered so far? Anything in terms of the groups, kind of the region selection, the middle portion here, or any of the group rights on the right-hand side?
Not a question, but I did want to just chime in for those kind of very brand new to WeSuite. As Stephen went through, groups essentially are the groups, and then the rights are the permissions that are under the groups, allow you to be able to associate one or multiple users to a group. So our demo happens to have a lot of groups. You can see over on the left we have admin all the way down to senior management, but for a lot of organizations, I've seen typically 4 groups. You've got your system admins, IT, they can basically do anything. You've got upper management that, again, could do almost everything but maybe things that admins can't do. You have salespeople that can, that have limited rights and can only do what they need to do. And then usually there's like a 4th group. Is it technicians? Is it approvers? Is it, junior kind of sales admins? From there, you can have much more groups, but I did want to clarify that now that Steven's set up groups and what all the groups are allowed to do, he can move over to the user setup tab and put people into groups. So that way, when you onboard a new salesperson, a new manager, you essentially just associate them to a group and they just automatically adopt all of those permissions. There are, other more specific user by user permissions, but I just wanted to make sure that we went through that kind of brief explanation of kind of the purpose of groups, and how it's a way to have groups have specific permissions of what they can do, so you can group people into each group. We're saying group 50 times. So I don't know, Stephen, if next you wanted to just show where you can associate a user to a group or one or more groups.
Yeah, that was actually a question that just came in. Can you cover how to add a user to a specific group? Yep, absolutely. So that was kind of my flow for the webinar to really to begin with, was kind of show what each group can do in terms of rights and things like that. And I'm going to go over how to actually assign a group to a user. So really quickly, because I'm sorry I didn't even start with this, to add a group, you just have to click on the new button, assign a group name, and then click on OK. What that'll do is that'll just add the group to the left-hand side. You'll then have the ability to go in. The group name will be defaulted, and if you ever need to make changes, you can always make changes to this. You can assign a description like I mentioned, and then everything else is kind of your normal flow. Like I said, the important thing that I can't stress enough is whenever you create a brand new group, it won't have access to any region in the system. So make sure that you go in once you add a new group and just make sure they have access to the specific regions that they would need access to. So just something important to note there. So to answer your question and kind of piggybacking off what Sam said, so once you add your group to the system, you'll then have the ability to assign a user to a group. So in this particular setting here, we have in system configuration, keeping in the same section here, user setup, we'll go ahead and we'll search for our user. Oops, sorry about that. So we'll just go ahead and just search for really any user here. So we'll search for Johnny, who's our user. So when you search for a user, you can either search by name or you can search by region or office, whatever you're more comfortable with. You would find the user. You would go ahead and click on this little pencil here for the edit button. And then in the middle of the screen, it'll be gray initially. Once you hit edit, it'll light up a little bit. And you'll see you have access to all of these groups. So in the access tab, this will tell you what groups you have within your system. So you'll see we have everything from admin to sales, some approval groups, things like that. And all you would have to do is go into the actual access section, click on the checkbox of the specific group that you want to have access to. So we'll just assign him to everything here. And we'll go ahead and we'll click on save. So by doing that, it'll give Johnny Cash in this case access to every single group within the system. Now, a follow-up question to this is that I get a lot of the times: how do I assign an approval group to a user? And I think this is a good time to show that. So with approvals, which is something that we weren't going to cover today, each approval has an approval group that is assigned to it. So kind of backtracking a little bit. Every group in this system can be an approval group. So you may say, I want the admin group to approve, X, Y, or Z job. If you add a group to an approval system, what that'll do is that'll automatically make that group an approval group in the job. So if you have, let's say, Johnny Cash, he wants to be an approver, you would go over to this approvals tab in the middle portion, and you would find that group there. So it's important to know that in order for the user to belong to the approval group, he must also first belong to the respective group. So to kind of give you a little bit more detail there, for me to belong to the admin approval group, I need to first belong to the regular admin group. So toggling on admin doesn't necessarily give me access to the approval group for admins. So this also gives you a little flexibility as well to say, let's just say I have 5 system admins, but of the 5, only 2 of them are going to be doing approvals. You can toggle and control who has access to what. So this is the first part, is how you just assign a group to a user. You just go into the access group. And the approvals portion is the next tab that you'd really be focusing on. I really wouldn't worry about these 2 middle tabs here. I would say access and approvals. Approvals gives you access to all the approval groups within your system. So it's access first, and then it's approvals after that. So hopefully that answers your question. I know that was a little more long-winded, but hopefully that answers your question to kind of assign and kind of gives a little bit more detail there. Before I continue with this, because I think this actually kind of leads me into the next section, kind of going over user rights and kind of grid rights and all that good stuff. Any other questions before I jump over on groups or group settings, group rights?
Stephen, I'm sorry if I missed it, but if you copy a user and paste a user, it keeps their groups?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's actually a good thing to know is if you, one of the main features with copying is if you ever are working with a user that has, let's say you're onboarding somebody new that has similar groups, similar people manager rights. The big one for me is people manager, which I haven't gotten into just yet. But the people manager rights, this gives you access. If you do a copy a user, this carries over all the people manager as well. So people manager and groups are the main two reasons I would suggest doing a copy of a user, because that carries over all of the same features there. And it's a huge time saver because people manager can quickly get out of hand if you have, a bunch of users in your system in terms of the checkboxes. And it's a nice little time sink there. So any other questions before I jump over?
Nope, looks good.
Okay, awesome. So kind of carrying through with this. So really the next bubble here, the next kind of checkpoint here is reviewing the user grid rights settings. So grid rights within user information here, grid rights you're going to see grid rights thrown on twice in the system. You're going to see grid rights for the user, and you're going to see global grid rights here within program options. So the important thing to know is global grid rights in program options are exactly what they say, they're global. So any changes you make here are going to be for all users within your system, regardless of what group they're in. If they're in your system and they're active, they're going to be receiving these changes. System configuration, however, is there for you if you want to do specific to the user. So what are grid rights? Grid rights are broken out between about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or so categories there. Grid rights allow you to take control and see and edit what's within a job. Perfect example of this is you may want certain users to have access to the taxable tab. So from a support standpoint, one of the things that I always saw was this taxable checkbox. This basically has everything that you see in this dropdown. So you're going to go to adjust first, and you're going to select your category here. So you're going to see equipment, labor hours, chargeable items. These are all corresponding to this grid right here. So I'll just bring this up so you can see it. So everything here, and I'm just going to go back here, everything within this grid, all of these options here are going to be a kind of exact parallel of everything in these below grids. So the equipment grid, labor grid, chargeable items, RMR, test and inspect, all this stuff here is going to be perfectly mirrored in the system configuration screen. Anything with a kind of this reddish orange tint is going to be on the main row, which is this primary row right here. Anything in green that you're going to see down here, and we're going to see a little bit of it down here, that's your secondary row. So the secondary row is if you were to ever expand this little plus sign, this gives you access to an entirely separate window. You actually you'd be shocked how many people don't even know the secondary row exists. A lot of the times people will throw part labor down here, freight and warranty, cut sheet, device location. Those are generally the ones that are super popular, which is I think why we have it mirrored here within our demo environment. But this is a nice little way to kind of break out so you're not overwhelmed and you're not kind of scrolling a lot with the main labor grid, with the main equipment grid. So this gives you access to all these different options. But what I wanted to do is just show you this really quickly so you can see a lot of this stuff will then make sense to you. So for instance, we have unit costs, we have, GPM. Everything that we're seeing here, you're going to look through these parts and you're going to see, the GPM, you're going to see unit cost. And all of these options here are interchangeable. You can move them around, you can drag them, you can just click and drag them and move them around. So you can have a nice view of how your kind of interface looks. And this is also per user, right? So you can control this per user, you can move around the GPM, you can move around hide part. And there also might be things on here that you don't care about, or you don't want a specific user to have, and that's fine. What's great about this is this gives you access to then take away and kind of control what's there. So you'll have, and this is something that can, I'm not going to go through every single option here because there's a ton, but the important things to know is the field name. This first column gives you the actual database value. So for most of you, you're not really going to care about this field name column. This is probably going to be, there might be some names here that are kind of the same. There might be, like warranty or freight or things like that you can probably figure out. There's also going to be some things on here like Matt Burr or, things like that. These are all kind of like your database values. So I really, if you're going through these grid rights, I would actually ignore this field name first. I would focus on these other grids here. So the main row checkbox toggles what's on the main row. So again, it's your first row right here. You have your green row. So you have your, if this isn't checked, so like if I were to unselect that, it drops down to the next little section here. You'll see it kind of populate down here. Let me just toggle that because that's actually an important one to have in the main row. Visible is the next one. So again, this is toggled on or off. That dictates main row or secondary. Visible hides the checkbox. So you may say, you know what, I don't want my users having, 10 columns here. I want to keep it as clean and simple as possible. You can unselect visible. You can unselect that, and that will just hide that checkbox, that section, that column for that user. The width, again, this is also something that I wouldn't really focus on too much. This is literally just the size of the checkbox. So the 20 and the 150, the numbers you're seeing here are the millimeters. So this gives you access to how big the actual box is by default. Again, I would say most of our users don't really touch this. This is generally kind of your stock default values. But again, for whatever reason, if you want to make the boxes bigger, you can increase the size there. But 9 times out of 10, people aren't really touching that. Allow edit. This is also something that's very, very important from an admin standpoint. The allow edit section, this gives you access to like a read only. So if you want users to be able to make changes, you can make sure this allow edit's toggled on. If you don't want them changing it, but you want them to have visibility of it, a good example of this could be taxable, right? It could be like this item is sold as taxable always. You want them to see that it's taxable, but you don't want them to have the ability to go through it and toggle it on or off. If you check allow edit, toggle that off, but keep visible on, you'll be able to see the column, but the user won't be able to make changes to the column. A lot of the times people will do this for like description, manufacturer number, taxable is another very important one that I see, model number, things like that, where our users will hide that from being, or not hide it, but I'm sorry, but to prevent it from being edited. So with again, extra depth. These are things that are kind of a part of the nitty-gritty portion of being an admin, but this gives you the kind of the flexibility to control what certain people see versus what other people see. Because like Sam had mentioned, users might belong to specific groups, might belong to multiple groups, and you can control what each user has, because each user might be a little different in terms of their comfort level or their flexibility with what they know. Beyond that, the caption is, from my standpoint, in kind of your standpoint as an admin, the caption window is where you're really going to be focusing on. The caption window is twofold. This shows you what is actually the name of the column in your system, and it also allows you to change the column, the caption, to something different. Why this is nice is that you may say, we may want different verbiage. We may not like a certain way it was defaulted to be worded out of the box. The caption changes how you view and how you read certain columns. So this is a nice little thing to see if you want to kind of change that ability there. You can simply just type into it, and the next time you just add a value. The next time you go into the software, just going to tab out like that. Next time you log in, log out, you see that new caption. So that gives you the ability to kind of change it, kind of give WeSuite and WeEstimate your own custom flair. The format, not necessarily too much of a big deal from an admin standpoint. Format is just how the column is being read. So if you're an admin and you've seen sometimes where, like, let's say like a value in the document comes over and it doesn't have a plus or like a dollar sign, or maybe the decimal point is a little off. One thing that's always important to look at is this format column here. Again, this is generally, like, I would say more of a support type of thing, or a documents kind of thing. but this is what controls the actual format of the actual column there. So from an admin, you might want to have another decimal point, Joe. We actually, I remember we had a support ticket come in where a client of ours wanted to have 3 decimal places shown to prevent a rounding issue. So we added another 0, and that gives you that 3rd decimal place. So this gives you that additional customization, additional flexibility to control what you want to see. Now, again, most of the times our users don't play around with format too much. It's something that generally support will handle. So if you're not familiar, if you're not kind of comfortable with it just yet, but you want to kind of make some changes to how certain things are viewed or anything along those lines, feel free to submit a support ticket. Be more than happy to kind of help walk you through that process. And lastly, justification. Justification is just how it's same kind of language with like a Word document and things like that. It just shows you how it's justified. So you give you it left, justified, right, justified, center. Going through these, a lot of these are going to kind of follow the same process. The really last kind of important thing to show here on equipment is just this these labor categories. So labor categories are kind of shown in a little bit of an interesting way. If you're doing these right, you're kind of walking through as an admin, and you want to take a look at your labor categories. Labor categories are listed out in the field name by a numerical value of when they were added. That's why I would focus specifically on the caption. So if you want to make sure you have labor categories shown, focus on the caption here. You don't really pay too much attention to the field name. That's just how they were added into your system. So there might be some kind of disorganized stuff here, a little bit like that. But the caption here is the biggest thing to look at. By default, your labor categories are always going to be on the secondary grid. And I think the reason for that is just to kind of give you a little bit of more of a cleaner look. So just something to know, by default, your labor categories will always be on the second grid, but if need be, you can always take them off that and change it to the main row. Kind of blowing through the other guys here, all these other ones are very, very similar to each other. This is where you would control your labor hours. These are just your options within your labor grid that you can show. Add quantity, total quantity, is labor taxable, things like that. Charge items, very similar. These are all options that are on your grids where you can control, what you see, what you don't see. Now I'm just going to go through all these so you can just see it really quickly here. I'm not going to go through it just because of time. I'm not going to go through every single option here. Same thing for RCM and lease, test and inspect, wire as well, like total feet, wire name, things like that. But lastly, the last thing I want to focus on is your folder summary. So actually, I took on a new role here at WeSuite maybe about a couple months ago, where I do a lot more of these touch calls with our clients. If you haven't met with me already, you probably won't be getting an email soon enough. Is that I kind of set up these calls and kind of work through all of our clients and kind of see where they're at and kind of gauge of everything that they and these things that are going on. And one of the things that came up was this folder summary tab. And I was actually kind of shocked that a lot of people don't use this. Folder summary is something that we have to offer where folder summary gives you access to view your folders, total cell, total labor, total freight, all that good stuff. And it's all controlled in the system configuration grid here. So this gives you the ability to take a look at, a nice little view of the actual quote on a folder level. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll activate a couple of these so you can see it. I wanted to make sure I have this saved for the actual quote itself. So we're just going to go ahead and just add a couple of these here. And then I don't think I need to do a log out and a log back in. Let's just make sure. So this now, I just turned on a couple different options here. So this is a nice little tool that we have to offer. If you're not familiar with this, this was called Folders Beta for a very long time. I think in later builds of V5 and the early builds of V6 was Folders Beta. It's now just called Folders or Folder Summary. This is a nice little way to have a quick, easy access to all of your folders within a job. So let me go ahead and see if I can add this so you can see different levels here. So when you're adding a new folder to a job, it'll tell you the folder cell, total cost. These folder like positioning, things like that, these are options I just turned on. It just kind of gives you the positioning of the folder. It'll tell you your total cost, total cell, total freight warranty. It's a nice little tool if you're not using it already to see what each folder has at a glance. This is not editable, so most of the columns here are read-only, but this is a nice way to see at a glance what each folder's value is within a job. So if you're working with, 5, 10, 15 folders within a quote, this gives you a nice, easy access to view everything at a quick glance. I just wanted to mention that because I had a touch call with a couple of clients, and both clients were like, wait, folder summary, what does that mean? So it's a nice little tool that we have to offer where, it's kind of an expanded summary report, I would say, is like it gives you that additional level of depth. Any questions on any of the user grid rights that I was going over just now in terms of just like checkboxes, how they work, main row, secondary row, caption, things like that?
No, I was going to say we don't have to go into detail, but maybe also show where this is in program options in case they wanted to do it globally.
Yeah, absolutely. So globally, this is what I was showing before at a quick glance, but this is really, no, you're okay. No, it's a good idea to bring it back. So it's tools, program options, global grid rights on the left-hand side, so about maybe like halfway down. And then all of these options here are going to be mirrored. So the only thing that's important to know is that global grid rights does not have the folder summary. So the folder summary, the folders tab, is not controlled within program options. That's per user. Everything else here is an exact mirror. So all of these checkboxes here are going to be controlled. The only caveat is the main versus secondary row are not controlled in global grid rights. So you can control what's turned on and what's visible, what can be edited. But if you want to control what is main row and secondary row, that has to be controlled per user. So just a couple of stipulations, a couple of differences. Global grid rights is, again, for everybody. The system configuration grid rights is per user. And then the stipulations of folder summary and main row versus secondary row, those are just controlled in grid rights instead of global program options. Okay. Quick question came in. If I change the caption or a name for a user, does it change for all users? No. So if you change a caption in grid rights, it strictly just changes it for that user's column. So that's just a nice, quick way to do it. Now, if you were to go through here and go into global grid rights and change it, then that will give you the option to do it for everybody. So it really just ultimately depends on what you want to do, but you have the ability to do either way. Yeah, no worries. Awesome. That's a great question. Okay. So we'll keep the ball rolling here, kind of going through, your user grid rights. We did that. Awesome. So one of the last sections here I want to go over is just our regions and offices. This one's a relatively quick section. So regions and offices, this is generally your hub where you would go in to manage your offices and your regions. You have your list of regions on the left-hand side. In the middle portion of the screen, upper grid here, you have all of your labor categories. So you have, your labor category, and it's broken out by your region cost, region sell, and then what each category is being sold for. So this is generally where you're going to be going if you're going to be updating your labor rates within your system. So if you have a particular labor category that you want to change the cost and sell to, you just simply go into this section here and change on the grid what you want that category to be cost and what the overall sell for that category is. So that's it on the top grid. And you can scroll through here and you'll see all of your regions. We have a ton of regions in our demo environment. On the bottom portion, these are all of our offices. So you'll have at a quick glance, you have access to all of your offices. So you have which region the office is in, the office name, brand, which is an e-sign setting, any notes, addresses, city, state, zip code, phone number. The middle portion of here is where you can control all of your kind of specific values, so like your burden, lease burden, GPM, things like that. So if you have specific values you want to assign to an office over a region, you can do so at the bottom. You also access your license numbers as well. So if you have a license number that's pertaining to that particular office, you can assign it there. And then also, who it's been licensed by, so New York State, state of Massachusetts, whatever it may be. Also, another really important thing from an admin standpoint is that we control the tax values, the default tax values. So you have your ability to control if it's a sum only, excluding cost and sell. You can set that by default. So whenever a job is created within that office, you'll have the ability to select it there. And then also you have the ability to do an office approval system. So something I'm going to go into in a little bit here. is you have the ability to set a pre-approval and a post-approval system for each office as well as a region. So what that'll do is that'll say if you're quoting to an office or a region and a user has a priority for office or region turned on for their user, it'll automatically go to that office or that region's approval system. Okay. So really to kind of go through this at a kind of a quick glance, and I'm sorry, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm just going a little faster. We have all of our offices and regions on the left-hand side. So first and foremost, we'll go ahead and just toggle any of these offices or regions. So region is like this little globe icon, and the office has a little, oh, I didn't even realize that was actually a little office building. Been here 5 years and never knew what that was. So you can go ahead and click on the region and click on the edit pencil. And what that'll do is that actually changes the actual view that you're looking at. So what this will do is this will give you 3 different grids to work with. The grid kind of in the middle portion of the screen has 3 tabs. You have your general, which is just your way to name the region, give a description, a default tax value. So if you want to assign a default tax value according to that region, you can, or you can have the tax take from your site on the job if you have that module. You have your approval. You have your post-approval system as a default. You can assign a default office to the region. So if the user were to quote to the customer care group, it'll automatically throw them into the Albany region, whatever it may be. And then you have your brand. So brand controls a value within your eSign settings, which gives you the ability to add an additional layer to that. So you'll have a customer success branding when you're quoting to that region. Calculations, this middle tab here, this is where you would control your jobs, your region's default values. You'll have a default margin, so your default GPM. You have material burden. You have an overall burden, so you can set it based 10% based off cost, sell, or fixed. You have freight, so it calculates 2% freight based off of cost or sell. I can sell it to the customer as well. If you want to sell it, you can toggle this checkbox here. And then lastly, from this window here, you'll have the ability to set a default for warranty. So warranty, same concept, cost or sell. And you can sell it to the customer, and you can set a profit margin as well based off of the warranty. Accounting, this is generally a very situational option to use. I wouldn't really focus too much on this. This specifically does exactly what it says. It's only used for systems with more than one company database for their accounting. This is something that we call a regionalized system. So if you have multiple companies assigned to your accounting database, multiple warehouses, multiple organizations, this would be something that you would select. So 9 times out of 10, I would actually go as higher than that, 9.5 out of 10 times. This accounting tab won't really ever be touched. I'll take focus mainly on these first 2 tabs here, your general, your taxes, whatever it may be, and your calculations. From an admin standpoint, calculations, this middle tab here is where you're going to be spending the bulk of your time. This kind of controls your default values. Kind of switching over to this other section here on the right-hand side. This is your labor rates for that region. This tells you if you belong to this region, what is visible for you. So right now, this region only has access to about 5 or 6 labor categories. So you'll have installation, technical, cabling, etc. This middle tab here, calculated. If you were to select this, this allows you to calculate a labor category based off of a value. So you can select calculated, select a percent here, so 10%. So this will basically tell you installation labor is calculated based off of 10% of, and you can select your value. So that right now, the way this would read is it will say this is calculated on 10% of material sell. And you can also set a default value, whether it's taxable or not taxable. So this is really that top portion. This will allow you to control what labor each region can see. The reason for this is you may want to have certain regions only be able to work with certain categories, or certain categories might only pertain to a specific region. So this gives you that option up there. Below that, this is just kind of the same office grid that I was showing before. This gives you access to just kind of a simplified version of it, just specifically focusing on that region. So this is your office. This will just give you access to that office and kind of show you exactly what each category is and what it offers. But again, it's the same view as I was showing before. There's just your default values that you would set for that. And that really is all there is to that portion there. So really quickly, to add a region to the system, and I'm not going to kind of fully go through this because this is our demo environment. I don't want to add another category here. But what you would do is you just go ahead and click on this new button. And what this will just do is this will basically just give you the exact same window we had worked with before. And then from this window, you can go ahead and just add a name, a description, and kind of walk through the exact same process like we just did. This will give you the ability to kind of go in there. You have the ability to add an office. So you can click on the new button down here as well, and you can add an office to the system as well. This will be the add new office window, and you can select a name, description, address, and all that good stuff. And you can kind of go forward with the advanced tab to select the rest. You can set an office quota if you want to, default tax values, licenses, with your license number, who you're licensed by, all that good stuff. So that would really be the process on how to add and where to go. Yep, I would expect to get that. And be able to mark and create a new office and region. So we have a couple of minutes left. Any questions on the office and region creation?
No, I think the only thing I would say, we won't go through it today, but if you are using the finance lease module, that's handled at the office level and that advanced edit, but it'll either be in another video, or if you have questions about it, feel free to call in to us.
Got it. Yeah, the advanced edit. This is just to show it really, really quickly. If you're using the the leasing module, this is where you would go to select and create your leasing plan. So you would have your key deposit, RCM, your factor, default term, all that good stuff. I didn't really want to go too much into that because it is an optional module, and the leasing could actually be a webinar in and of itself. But that's where you would go. You would come in the advanced option there, and you would be able to select your values here in terms of your RCM and your lease. Okay, awesome, fantastic. So really, guys, we have a couple minutes left. I'm not seeing any questions, which is good. I know it is a lot today, so hopefully I'm not going too fast or overwhelming you guys. I just want to get in as much as I can in this webinar today. The last checkbox is kind of just walking through how to kind of create certain items, whether it's labor, RMR, charge items, inspection items, all that good stuff. So time permitting, I'm going to try to see if I can hit all of these really, really quickly here. So to edit, really kind of create all these categories, it's just you're going to be focusing on two sections. So editors, which we conveniently have open already, which is fantastic. Editors, this gives you the ability to view as well as edit your charge items, RMR items, test and inspect, and wire. All of these really follow the same process. You're going to see for certain one of these categories, you're going to see new class and you're going to see new item. New class, what new class does is new class controls what the header is. So for this one, we have headers for like accounting, we have headers for bonds, we have headers for construction, insurance, all that stuff. The new item will allow you to create a sub item that goes under one of these categories or these classes, and the new class as a header. So you may look at your system, you may say, you know what, I don't think this item is going to fit any of these categories. So let me go ahead and add a new class. Adding a new class will give you the option to look at your classes you already have at a glance. You can edit one if you want to toggle it and click on edit. You can click on, you can go into the search window here and type in add to add a new one. Or you can simply just delete one that maybe it was created by error and there's no sub ones underneath it. You can always repurpose that as well. To add a new item, you would go ahead and click on this green plus for new item. This will tell you what class it is. So you'll see all the classes that we just saw. You have the ability to add a name, a description. You have the ability to do a charge. So, charge items give you the ability to do a direct or percent. Direct is just a flat charge, right? So you can do like $100 or $1,000, whatever it may be. Percent of allows you to do a calculated item. So you can say, this item is being charged a percent of total system cost, and you select your percentage. So maybe it's 5%. You would then have some miscellaneous options here. Is it taxable? Is it a contractor item? Is it a pass-through? Burden, bucket, reimbursable. Lastly, you have the option to select your accounting link, where if you were to have an accounting system integrated with it, you would be able to select your accounting link to go along with that item, which ultimately saves you a step. So if you're using, WeSuite to do your chargeable items, you have the ability to link it to an accounting item if you so wish. Same thing goes for RMR items. The RMR items is a little bit of a slightly different process. You have the ability to select your region. Then you have your new item. So new item gives you kind of the same window in essence. It's just kind of a little tailored more towards RMR items. You have your name, your description, what it's calculated on. So you can have your direct charge, your estimated cost, whatever it may be, your calculation percent, your default term, your billing frequency, so annual, semi-annually, quarterly, monthly. You have your cost, your monthly rate, minimum charge, lease amount, and also lastly, you have your accounting link. So with RMR, you might have more items within Sedona or whatever accounting system you might be using that you can select from that dropdown. Same thing goes for test and inspect. Test and inspect is very similar to charge items. You have your new class and you have your item. So see, with new class, very similar interface. And for new item, very similar interface as well. You'll have the ability to set a class, your name, description, cost per unit, the time needed per unit, your test percent of the item, your annual frequency, so how many months, your GPM percentage, is it a recurring cost, and then kind of other like little annual parts, annual services, cost type, labor, or other, and then lastly your accounting link as well. So I didn't see a question come in. If we add a new RMR item, does it have to exist in Sedona first to be able to edit? Great question. No, it does not. So if you are to add an RMR item, so let's just go back really, really quickly. You can choose not to link it to anything. And then once you add the item to Sedona or your accounting system, you would then just find the item itself. So you go, let's just say you added this item right here. You would then find the item, select the dropdown, and then find the new mapping wherever you were to add it later. So if you want to, you can skip the accounting linking process initially, and this goes strictly to create the item in WeSuite, and then retroactively go back and then add the item to the accounting link through there. So it's not a requirement. If you have it ahead of time, great, it saves you a step. But if you don't have it, that's not a problem either. You can always just backtrack and then remap it if you want to. Okay, awesome. The last little category here is just wire. Same process, you just click on the add new item. For wire, it's the most direct of the four, in my opinion. You just have the name, description, cost cell, cost per foot, region, and then your accounting link as well. Lastly, since we're really close on time here, I'm going to kind of go through really, really quickly to labor, which is the last item I wanted to show. Labor, you go to labor categories. So it's tools, program options, labor categories. And then to add a labor category, you would click on this add labor category button. Again, I'm not going to go through with the actual physically adding it because this is a demo environment. I don't want to mess anything up here. But you would go ahead and you would type in the description of your new labor category. Your description is just the header. So like installation labor, technical service, whatever it may be. Then you would click on create. It'll then add the item to this respected grid. And again, something important to note is that program options controls and dictates what is globally seen. However, region takes priority. So if you were to have your global, you have your grid rights here, your program options, you just show on hours grid, calculated, all that stuff. If you have show on hours grid here, but the region doesn't allow it, region will take priority for that. So it's just something that's important to note is that region will always take priority over your program options. This background category controls the default values for everything, minus the region setting if you want to change it up there. So region setting can control how a labor category impacts per region, or we can choose to say, I'm going to bypass that. I'm just going to strictly have my labor calculated here. Everything in this interface is the exact same as the region interface. You can show on an hours grid, you can hide it, you can choose to calculate it or not. If it's not calculated, then it's just strictly the cost in the cell plus times the quantity. If it is calculated, then it'll just follow the calculated process of like a total equipment cell or whatever it may be. And then this is how you would bind it to the respected category. So you would find the accounting labor category, you would map it here. If you ever see a numerical value, which I purposely saw this and I left it here, is if you ever see like a 10 or a 2 or a 4 or anything along those lines, that basically tells you and controls what, I guess it'll basically tell you this category was deleted from Sedona or your accounting group. So this is a nice way to kind of take a look at it. So if you see a 10 or a 2 or a numerical value, simply hit that drop down and then find a new category to map it to. That generally means it was either renamed or it was removed. And that's really everything I had on my end. Kind of in closing, was there any other questions that any of you had? I know that today was a super heavy webinar. I had a ton of stuff to carry, kind of cover, but I was able to get through everything I had on my end. Was there any questions from anybody here?
No, I think it's looking good.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Sam, you want to close us out and let us know what's coming up on the calendar?
Yeah, I will close this out. Definitely a jam-packed webinar, so thank you, Stephen. If anyone does want to refer back to this webinar again, it will be posted on our website by this time tomorrow. It will be under the Learn menu on the Training Webinars page. Next week is our user webinar, all about how to use the URG in WeOpportunity and WeEstimate. So definitely have your users join that and any admins as well. And then next month, we're doing a joint user admin webinar on October 17th to review the different support options and free educational tools that we have for users and admins. So join that as well if you can. And so thanks again, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.